Welcome to the Krinzman Property Playbook, where we dive deep into the heart of South Florida's real estate scene. I'm your host, Matthew Krinzman, here to guide you through the strategies, insights, and community connections that make buying and selling real estate a science. If you're looking to move beyond the basics, build trusted relationships, and grow your understanding of this competitive market, you're in the right place. Every episode, I'll be bringing on local pros, from attorneys to contractors, to give you the inside scoop on what it really takes to succeed in real estate. So whether you're an investor, buyer, or just curious about the market, let's kick things off and get you one step closer to your real estate goals. Welcome to the Playbook. Welcome everyone to the Krinzman Property Playbook. I am your host, Matthew Krinzman. I am a real estate broker associate here in South Florida in the little town called Aventura, Florida, with a company called One Sotheby's International Realty. And today I have joining me is Justin Baker from the Baker Wealth Strategy. And Justin, why don't you just, lead in. Tell us a little bit about you, your background, who you are, what you do, and then we'll get going.
All right. Well, thanks, Matthew. I'm Justin Baker. I'm a lawyer here in Texas. I work for my wife, Jennifer, at Baker Wealth Strategies. I'm the in-house counsel. Okay. And so what I do is help deliver some advanced designs for clients who are primarily closely held business owners, across the spectrum of types of businesses. We're in Houston, so oil and gas is king here. Yeah. But there are other industries as well. My background is, I graduated law school from the South Texas College of Law here in Houston, and then got my LLM, which is an advanced law degree in wealth management law from Texas A&M School of Law. My entire career has been in the practice of estate planning. Started out at a firm doing basic estate planning, and then moved along to advanced estate planning, kind of branched out and hung up my own shingle. And I owned my own practice for several years. Mm-hmm. And then a few years ago, stepped out of private practice and went to work for a multifamily office here in Houston that worked exclusively with ultra high net wealth families. I had a portfolio of families, about 8 families, that ranged in net wealth from 150 to 400 million in net wealth. So
that's pretty hefty. That's a nice nest egg for their families.
Right. That's right. They have different problems, but problems.
Yeah, well, right? Exactly. As my mother would say, I should be so lucky to have those problems.
For sure. So my background was certainly on the estate planning side of the house. Mm. But I also, prior to going to law school, I was on active duty in the Army as an FP. Oh, yeah? Spent about 10 years on active duty. I've stayed in the reserve since then, so it's been about 26 years now total.
Thank you. Well, congratulations on that, doing that, being in so long.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, I never would have believed it when I went through ROTC to pay for college, and here I am 26 years later.
Here you are. Yeah.
So, and I promise you, my instructors at ROTC would be the most surprised to find out.
Really? They're like, nah, not this guy. Justin's not the guy. Yeah, he's not. Maybe after college, up to college, and that's it. He's not. There's no future. That's
right. But while I was doing that, the Army paid for me to get an MBA, so I did that.
Okay, great.
A concentration in accounting. So that's me. My wife Jennifer, who operates the business, is a CPA by trade and a certified financial planner. So
okay, great. Wow.
We really focus on providing a holistic look at wealth management for our clients.
Just curious, what's that dynamic like to work with your wife? Actually, like you said, you work for your wife, so you're not even working with her. She's the boss. Your wife is the boss. How's that dynamic? I'm just always curious because, when people, when couples are working together, you see it a lot in real estate. You see, the husband and wife teams, a lot in, the real estate sales. I've always, said myself, or I've said it out loud, actually, that I don't think I would want to work with my wife. Not that I don't enjoy being with her. It's just that I would never get away from work. It would just be constant. So I just was interested in how's that dynamic work for you? How do you balance it? Because people really listening to this. I know we're going a little off topic, but it's kind of an interesting topic to talk about just for a brief moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to answer the question at the outset, it works really well. But we do, like, we both have a passion for, and I understand how this is going to sound, but tax law. And
okay.
and
So you both are geeks for tax law. So
that's right.
That's
like,
really what it is.
I joke around about, like, on Friday night, we'll be sitting out on the back patio, having a happy hour and talking about different tax code sections or the tax cuts and job act or something.
Yeah.
I was like, man, if I were the neighbor kids just walking by, I mean, I would be egging us right now. This is terrible. But we both really do enjoy it. And I think have a really sincere mutual respect for the other one's ability to turn the puzzle piece in a way that lets us look at, like, the income tax side, the estate tax side, the estate planning side, and also the human side of what business owners face and what concerns they have, because if you haven't been in those shoes, like stomach bleeding, trying to make payroll,
Oh God. Well, just so the sales, commission sales, I have, I think I have constant ulcers, but
that's right. So, if you haven't been in that seat before, then it's hard to really understand I mean, you may be able to empathize, but you can't sympathize with what it feels like to have that weight and that burden. Of, we get paid when the world pays us for doing something.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah. So you can appreciate our side, as real estate agents. But I just was curious of how you guys balance that work life, together, and just, how you make it work for yourselves. It's always an interesting topic, and like I said, it's like I meet a lot of people who in this business who are husband and wives, but this was how you guys do it. It's always interesting to listen and learn from others how the husband and wife or the partners figure out how to make it work still on the professional level and also on the familial level, being at home with each other.
Well, I would say, like, and we marvel at this at times, like, we can, on the interpersonal side, be in a bit of a fuss with each other.
Sure.
But on the professional side, it's like, hey, look, I may be really mad at you about the dishwasher didn't get run last night or whatever, but
I know that.
We got to get dialed on this client. So
right. So you can put that aside. You can put it aside. Hey, you didn't wash that dish that was where you didn't wash your glass that you used last night, or you put the toothpaste in the wrong spot. You can separate that and, like, hey, let's talk about this client's tax implications that they have on their, the real estate assets, and as they're, putting together a trust for the family. And you guys you can compartmentalize that.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's helpful. But again, I really do think at the core, it's a shared passion.
Sure.
And then, I think Jennifer and I talk about this all the time about, like, we're in a hurry to help people, and our clients being the people, right?
Yeah.
In doing that, it makes it easier to be aligned with, this isn't too much talk. This isn't too much tax talk or too much whatever talk. It's what we need to do to get it right for the clients.
Understand.
I think that's great. I think the other piece is just a mutual respect for each other's.
That helps. Yeah. That helps. I mean, good for you guys for making it work. Like I said, I think my wife would be great in sales, and she is but it's like she has her passion. She likes what she does for a bit work. And I obviously enjoy what I do, and I've been doing it for a long time. And when she's been doing her thing for a long time, I guess, like I said, for some people, it's good to have a separation. So when you come home, but I guess, it obviously works for a lot of people, husband and wives in this world that work together, they definitely make it work. And good for you. It's kudos to everyone, to you and your wife, and to anyone else who's in that, who works together like that. That's amazing. So let's get into what you and your wife do, or what you specifically do at Baker Wealth Strategies. So let's run through that for us. Tell us what it is that you do to help people with the wealth. I guess you have a minimum client or a minimum, wealth that they should have, I guess, in assets is the best way to describe that.
Yeah. So there's not a stated minimum, but I would say that, like, the client is going to be, for the sweet spot for us, is somewhere between $1 and $30 million.
Okay.
And where that becomes relevant is, below the $1 million in asset mark, you're still kind of building, and assets being a total
everything, holistically everything, that homes, assets, stocks, bonds, whatever they have, and investments, where they have, not just necessarily cash on hand. Obviously.
That's right. Yeah, not in investable assets, just $1 million in assets. That's where we're kind of, the accumulation phase is kind of starting to pick up and take get traction. And then really kind of once you get past the 30 million threshold, and again, it's not a hard cutoff, but it's a pretty good indication. If you look at the estate tax exemption at 30 million, 28 million. So that's a pretty good estimate, because once we get into an estate tax planning scenario, or you have like 20 million in investable assets, I mean, I would start to be concerned, are we structured to best serve that client?
Right.
Because of the necessarily like the level of sophistication you get into some illiquid investments, some, you know, you start looking at other things that may not be our bailiwick. So that's why I was saying it may work out just fine, but if we're looking at it between $1 and $30 million, and
Understand. So let's dive into that. So the federal estate tax kicks in at what dollar amount? What's the dollar value?
So it's right now it's 13.99 million per individual. So I just round up for the sake of conversation to 14.
14. Yeah.
And then
per individual. So was it
so 28 million for a married couple.
Got it. Okay.
That's
all
right.
right.
So the first $28 million in your taxable estate at death is exempt from estate tax.
Okay.
And so then any amount over the 28 million for a married couple, right? And so when the first spouse dies, nothing happens. Second spouse dies, now we're counting, right? So
sure.
Once we have that threshold surpassed, and again, I should say, first of all, let me start off, what kind of lawyer would I be without a disclaimer? So while I am a lawyer, I'm not your lawyer or anybody on the podcast lawyer. I am a lawyer in Texas, licensed in Texas. I'm certainly not giving
legal advice. Right.
And we don't have no attorney-client relationship is being
said.
So with that in mind, any amount over that 28 million, whatever the exemption amount is when you die is what it is. And so that's what I was going with.
Understand. Unless they change the rules at some point.
Right. And it's of note that the Tax Cuts and Job Act, the TCJA that President Trump proposed, signed into law in 2017, took effect 2018, expires at the end of this year.
Unless it's continued with a new bill.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So it has a sunset this year as it is.
That's right. And as you might imagine, perhaps unsurprisingly, President Trump's a pretty big fan of his original.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So
no, that makes sense.
he intends to extend it. It's just, when you get down to the wire, what goes, what stays. It's hard to say for sure.
I understand. Yeah.
But it is a reasonable expectation, I believe, not having a crystal ball or anything, but just a reasonable expectation that it will be extended.
Yeah, they're discussing it right now. The bill's it's I guess when the House of Representatives right now to be this. I mean, they're debating it now, and so I guess once they hammer out the finer points and they'll vote on it, it should pass, and then they'll send it up to the Senate, and the Senate will add its 2 cents to it, and then probably sign it, pass it, and then the president will gladly sign it when it gets to his desk, whenever it is in the next month or so. I guess that's what they're predicting. But just out of curiosity, let's just say it did sunset here, what would it revert back? What would it revert to then at this point?
Yeah, so it would essentially be cut in half.
Oh, really? So you would go from
right.
like 14 million to 7, and then really 14 million as a couple. That's a big hit.
Right.
Okay, that's a big
it is, right?
Yeah.
So folks who are like kind of in the safe harbor CJA may find themselves in a bit of a sticky situation.
Right.
Right. And so there is somebody in that spot who would find themselves with a taxable estate. If the TCJA did sunset at the end of this year, there are planning opportunities that you can do to maximize, the bonus exemption amount prior to the sunset. But I would say that they don't happen fast oftentimes. And so if you are in that spot, getting connected with a qualified, experienced estate planning attorney in your area would be good, because some of the levers that you have to pull take a little while to get in place.
Sure. So when someone's planning the estate, especially on the real estate side, what do you advise your clients, and you and your wife advise your clients to do? What are those steps, things that someone who is fortunate enough to have that kind of, I want to say assets. I mean, it's not really wealth, assets available, that need to be protected. What do you tell them, or how do you advise them? What's the advice that goes down? You start advising them on.
Yeah, I think at the outset, if you look at just solely from an asset protection and estate planning perspective, there are some fundamental things that we would look at initially, right? I think entity structure. So if you're a real estate investor and you have these investment properties, how are they held? Are they held in your name personally? Are they held in an LLC, held in a limited partnership, series LLC? How are they held? And to make sure that we have the appropriate legal liability protections in place that preserve your personal assets and keeps it separate from your investment assets and any liability that may attach. As
I understand.
So I think that's important. And then we say, okay, so you're alive and well, your assets are, adequately shielded from any attaching any liability to you personally. Then let's look at what are the documents that you need to comprise your estate plan as it stands now. So if you think about the most often encountered setup on my end, a married couple with kids, maybe they're adult, but kids nonetheless,
Sure.
children. And we say, okay, the real estate investment aside, we've got that still in mind, but let's just look if one or both of you becomes incapacitated, what happens? Do you both run? Because to your point earlier, maybe just one of the spouses is involved in running that business and the other one has nothing to do with it, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very likely. Yeah.
Right. So who's going to run this thing if you become incapacitated and you're the brain behind the operation? Do we have a key employee who's going to run? Like, how are we going to do this?
How are you going to set up the plan for how the business is going to continue? Essentially, right? That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. And then you think, do you have a kid that's involved in the business? Because we need to communicate. Because and I can say for sure that sometimes my children may have an elevated evaluation of their ability to do something compared to what I might think it is. So the kid may think, hey, look, I'm in the business every day. I'll be running it if something happens to mom or dad. And then mom or dad may be like, hey, good, he's a good kid, great kid, but he's not ready.
But
So I think it's important I frequently say, and I sincerely believe, that understandings are the leading cause of misunderstandings. Let's just write it out, say what we want to have happen, have the conversation, and just everybody's level set at that point. I think
that makes sense.
I think, making that clear is important. Documenting it, memorializing it in an appropriate document. If it's an operating agreement, if it's a partnership agreement, if it's through, the revocable living trust, which we'll talk about, right? So a revocable trust, I think of as the foundational document of an estate plan for almost all situations of clients who we would encounter. Sure. So the revocable living trust I describe it as the rule book of how things go in the event of your incapacitation and then eventual death. And it's particularly for a married couple. First spouse is incapacitated.
Sure.
Second spouse is, I call it so I have an 8-year-old and we read chapter books together all the time. So I describe this like a chapter book, except in the first chapter, it's the happiest chapter we got. Everybody's alive and well.
Yeah. So it starts off great. The sun's shining. Yeah.
Goes downhill sharply after that. So
until the big bad wolf shows up. You're good. Yeah, it's true.
Chapter 2, there's incapacitation. Right. Chapter 3, the first spouse dies. Then, and this is particularly important. It's important for any family, but I think it's particularly important with blended families to make sure that
which we have a lot of in our now. Yes,
for sure. And so this again, we just spell out let's think through all the reasonably foreseeable contingencies and let's spell out what's going to happen, who's doing what. So that way there's no like, well, I thought it was going to be this.
Right.
So first spouse passes away. What happens with the business interest? What happens with the silverware, the silver, grandmother's silver, whatever, all of it. Let's get it figured out. The retirement account, qualified retirement account, investment account, all of it. What are we doing? It's typically speaking going to be all for the benefit of the surviving spouse.
Sure.
And then at the death of the surviving spouse, it'll be typically speaking for the children.
Right.
But the question becomes, do they get it outright? Because, my wife and I we've never had the conversation, although at times I think I can determine, but we haven't written down who's going to die first and when. Although on both chronology
made me laugh
and
really
timing.
Good. But
as of yet, we haven't come to a hard conclusion on it.
Sure.
So the point being, we don't know if the kids are going to be 8, 18, 28, 38, how old they're going to be.
Right.
So in that way, you can say, hey, look, when the surviving spouse dies, or in the event of a simultaneous death of the spouses, we're going to split it. Everything is for the kids. It'll be in separate trusts for each one of the kids. Distributions can be made for health, education, maintenance, support, the things that we would do if we were there, right?
Right.
Help with the down payment on a house, pay for the wedding, pay for college. But the intent of the trust is to supplement the child's effort, not to supplant the child's effort. And so in that way, you can say, hey, look, this is all for the benefit of the kids. But I don't know about you. I know about me. If you want a sizable chunk of cash as an outright distribution when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, it would have made a heck of a story.
Oh my God, I would have gone crazy.
But it wouldn't have been a wise investment.
Oh, it would have been a terrible investment. I mean, oh my God, 18 years old in my 18 young 20s here in Miami at that time in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, actually, not the 80s. That was hit my 20s when I was in the 90s, and this place was crazy back then.
Yeah,
so I would have, oh my God. Yeah. Well, even I didn't have money and I still went nuts.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I hear you. So imagine if it was funded.
Oh my God. Oh, forget it. I would have been,
So that's what I say. Hey, look, let's do this with
some control,
with some guardrails up there.
Yeah.
And then you can say who's going to be in charge of these distributions, and it could be an aunt and uncle, depending on the asset. It could be an independent trustee.
Right.
Who's who in the zoo. I would also say that if you do have one kid who's involved in the business and is the heir apparent.
Sure.
And is going to get the business, but that's where the bulk of the wealth is. Then we need to look at how are we going to handle estate equalization. And
okay. That's something you just hit me with a term I'm not familiar with. I probably really never really heard, tell you the truth.
So estate equalization really is that scenario where, hey, look, the bulk of our family's wealth is found in the family's real estate investment business, whatever it is, oil and gas pipeline inspection business,
whatever it may be. Yeah.
But this kid has been involved in it, and this other kid isn't involved in it. I'm not saying they're doing anything like nefarious. They're just not involved.
No, they're just more involved. It happens. Yeah.
Right. And so it's not fair to the kid I shouldn't, it may be fair, but typically speaking, it works out to not be very fair that the kid who's not involved in the business has one half of the economic benefit of the business when the other kid's doing all the 100% of the work and getting half of the economic benefit, right? And so it kind of makes for odd business partners in that perspective. So you say, okay, look, we've built this business, it's a successful business. The one tragedy that would happen is if at our death, it tore our kids apart. So
I've seen that happen.
Yeah,
personally.
For sure.
That's sad.
Too. Yeah. And that's why I say, okay, well, how do we do it then? And so you could look and say, well, the rest of our other assets, be the investment accounts, retirement accounts, the house, the ski house, whatever, it's not going to get us there. So the easy button for any planner is to say, hey, well, let's fund the rest with life insurance. And then you have a sum certain, right? Like you're set, you're good. We'll put it in there. Fair to say, I don't sell life insurance, so I'm not.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, if you said, hey, look, how do we get liquidity pumped in there quickly to an amount that brings the other kid up to an equal level? Because I would say, hey, look, you're not involved in the business. I think it's fair to say you're not involved in the business. I don't think you should get the short end of the stick, like, whatever's left at the end of the retirement account when we're done using it. But also, as that business continues to grow, that's from the effort that your brother put into it. So for anything that happens to it from there is a result of your brother's effort.
So you would use a life insurance policy to make so the other whatever siblings or other family members who are not necessarily directly involved in the business can benefit still. So how do you determine how do you come up with a value then? How do you figure that out?
That's always, it's going to be a little bit of, so there are a multitude of ways to do it. I think the easiest way to do it is a little Kentucky windage and just say, hey, look, the reasonable value of this thing, if we were to sell it, blah, 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 is $10 million. So,
but is that the time the values today versus tomorrow? You're not trying to project what the value is going to be in 10 years or 20 years.
That's right. I couldn't do it. Right.
Right.
So,
it's today's value.
I still find myself without a crystal ball. Yeah, but so I would say, and clients have certainly done in the past where they say, well, today it's worth $10 million. In 10 years, if we just
be worth more, maybe less.
Yeah. So we'll do whatever, 12 million, 15 million in death benefit,
Mm-hmm.
and off we go. Or it's a lot of times for clients, if they built that from their, like, hey, look, man, 10 and you're good. Like, if you can't get there on that, I can't help you.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a good head start in life, no matter what. But so you would use the policy. So you would say if there's a value, let's say this assets are worth 10 million, you get a life insurance policy worth 10 million as well.
A death benefit of it.
Death benefit. So you'd have to. So you have to fund it you'd have to pay through the premiums or funding it.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I'm not. So I don't know if you would. I would leave it to the insurance professional to say, are you doing a term, or are you doing a permanent, or are you doing a whole life?
Right. Yeah.
Universal life. I don't know.
It wouldn't be a term because I mean the term is just expires at some point. So probably not my rudimentary understanding of life insurance, which actually just had a conversation. Had to sit down last week with a group about it. For myself and my wife. And I guess it would be some kind of like a universal or whole life or a mix of the two. That would probably be used. I mean, that's just my guess. I mean, I don't think term would make sense just because there's no death benefit. I mean, it's only really payable upon death. But if you outlive that term, then you're okay. Yeah. Then you're kind of done.
Yeah, that's right. So that's where I would think that there's probably a strong argument that it would be a permanent policy. And in the spirit of full disclosure, every client that I've done it with, when they did fund the estate equalization aspect of it, it was with a permanent life insurance policy.
Got it. Makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. So one thing I wanted to talk about. So the revocable living trust, you'd just put the whole everything underneath that.
Yeah. That's right. So you got the instruction books right now.
Right.
But it's only the instruction book for the things that it controls. And so that's where you transfer. And I would definitely say this is a state by state situation, but you put the house in your personal residence into the revocable trust. It doesn't trigger the due on sell clause for the mortgage.
Right. Yeah, I know. It keeps everyone can stay.
But I know in Florida, for instance, that they do have some very specific language that is required in that revocable trust in order to preserve the homestead exemption.
You're right about that, actually, because a few episodes ago, I had my estate and probate attorney who's local here, and she did talk about that because just also to keep the homestead exemption that we have in the state, to keep that. He said, actually, I think there's certain language that you have to make sure that's in it, so it doesn't. Because it could, if there's some language missing, then it becomes an issue. If the language, which you just mentioned, I believe she did actually say something just along the same lines. I don't remember the exact language, but she said that's why she says, you don't go to willsandtrust.com to do your wills and trusts. You come to someone, she said, like you come to an probate attorney, a state attorney like myself or any other attorney in the state of Florida who could do that to make sure that the language is in there that protects everyone at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great point. And I would like to, I have such a soapbox spiel about this, but I'll keep it short.
Sure.
Give the Reader's Digest version. If you're talking about doing this type of estate planning, you're not talking about, and not a knock on any online or
100%.
pre-filled form document for this estate plan.
Yeah.
It's not, people talk about like it costs a lot. And I was like, well,
it's going to cost you more later. Well, it's not going to cost you more. It's going to cost your family.
That's right. And so here's what happens is the price will end up being much higher down the road.
100%. Because you'd be in probate court or something, it'd be a mess.
And you completely frustrated the purpose of what you were trying to do in the first
100%.
place.
No, you're right. Yeah, you're 100% right about that. That's why I always like when, a lot of good estate attorneys and estate and probate attorneys will always also talk about wills and trusts, because if everything is not in place or is not done correctly, you will end up in probate court. It could be people could contest things that shouldn't be contested, and it becomes a real mess. Because if you did it, look, everything has a purpose. Everything serves, has a benefit. Great, you go online and maybe saved you some time and some money, and maybe you didn't need something that complex. But for those people, I'm saying, but like for people you're dealing with, it makes no sense to go to willsandtrust.com, whatever it is. Because it's much more, you need much more sophistication involved, a professional who can guide and advise along the way that everything is being done correctly. Because really, especially like if it's people with that kind of money who are 10 million, 30 million or more in assets. You don't want to, just for the sake of the family, really, to keep everyone peace and happy, is you want to avoid court as much as possible.
So, perhaps unsurprisingly, introducing the judicial process to figuring out your estate does not make it more efficient.
No, it makes it worse. And it costs money because you have to fund it still. Whoever is, you still have to fund it. It's going to take a lot, it could, depending on the situation, it could be 6 months or it could be a few years, that you're sitting there in the courts.
Point. And I think really for, the folks listening who are business owners, real estate investors, when you think about the impact that would have of that business, whatever entity you have it, if you have it through a limited partnership or through an LLC, a corporation, whatever, being tied up in probate, because
that's what you want to be.
Yeah. I mean, now that's like you have imperiled everything that you worked to build.
Yeah, you could, because the judge could say, you know what, hell, I could go like, all right, well, this is how I'm going to rule. We sell everything. You have there's only one person in the family gets everything, or it's like, all right, the worst is really, I guess is you have to sell if the business, and you don't want to do it, and then everyone's kind of out of luck at that point. I mean, I get in a condo, fine, sell the condo, split up the proceeds, but
it's always tough though when I look at it too of like, the unintended consequence of some of the depreciation recapture, the unintended tax consequences that come along with some of that. And especially if it's been tied up. So like who's running the business, who's not running the executor running the business. Is that right? Is that the right person? And so now you've kind of got a fire sale situation with the least efficient tax approach possible.
And the sharks will be swimming around because they'll smell the blood.
Yeah.
And you get the lower value. You won't get the value that really what the asset was worth, unfortunately.
That's right.
Because everyone's at that point, it's like just sell, get rid, and everyone's mad, so you really lose the value, unfortunately. So
it's like a JG Wentworth commercial, like it's my money and I want it now. And you're like, okay,
now it's gonna be in my head.
You're welcome for that. Yeah.
Yeah, now that song's gonna be in my head now for the rest of the day.
So, I promise you, I've done this long enough that there is one in every family, because everybody's like, "Oh, my kids will get a lot." There is one in every family.
Unfortunately, there always is. Even the best of families. The family that money changes a lot of things. Unfortunately, and people, especially if there's, you want to call sibling rivalries or whatever it is, familial rivalries with each other that could spark a war. I don't want to say to use a I'll use it, war. It's kind of like a war of the roses, right? It's like where everyone's arguing with each other. The parents may have had all best intentions, but really the idea is really that's why I think it comes in. You want to have this planned correctly. So you avoid those rivalries, or you avoid that potential war, the family interscene war, where everyone's arguing and then the family breaks apart. So really you want to
just burn it to the ground.
You want to keep the family together,
But I think too, so that's where like once you have the trust established and it has the instructions in there, right?
Yep.
Then you put the house in, you put the business in, you put the business in, but you assign the membership interest from your personally to that. We take a look at the operating agreement. We make sure the operating agreement is complete. We amend the operating agreement if we need to clarify any points or to introduce points that perhaps were not addressed. Because you can think, we've all been there when you're starting a business. You're not worried about hiring a lawyer to help you out with your operating agreement. You're going on whatever legal Zoom or something, you're cranking one out so that you can open up your bank account your business banking account down at the bank. But 100%. Now that it has taken off and it has succeeded, we do need to think about succession planning, and we do need to comprehensively address it, because most people have in there, hey, here's what happens if I die. If one of the members dies, here's what happens.
Right. But
it's kind of
it's kind of like when you say succession plan, it's kind of like what we have on our federal level, with the government, with the president, and down the line, you have the vice president. All right, something, God forbid, then you have the Speaker of the House, and you have the Secretary of State. It goes down, so there's always someone who's going to step in to continue running the business or whatever, running the country, however you want it. It's kind of the same way, right? You want that person, you want those people in place, so
it is.
You don't skip a beat, really. I guess really that's what it is, right?
Right. And I think that the complicating factor happens when you have two unrelated business partners, right? So you and I are in business together. We have a real estate investment, some short-term rentals, whatever, multifamily, whatever. And you and I are in business together. We enjoy working together. We work well together. Whatever, you're good at marketing or finding them, I'm good at ops. Well, great. But we also now we really do need to think about, hey, what happens in the event that one of us dies?
Or comes incapacitated.
Disabled. Yeah. Right. There's a divorce, and then this membership interest gets subject to
great point.
The division of the marital estate. And then what happens if one of us, like maybe we're separated in age by such that you're like, hey, look, at some point
I want to retire.
Yeah, I'm going to want to retire, and you're going to want to keep going. We got to figure out now, while we're all getting along and while we're all agreeing, how are we going to value what that interest is worth? And then how are we going to pay for it? Because you can say, hey, look, if I'm retiring, I would like, again, it's my money and I want it now. And you're like, okay, well, that's great, but it bankrupts the business. Interest rates are 7%. If I can even get the loan, like what? And so say, okay, let's address how we would handle and structure the buyout in the event of death, in the event of a permanent or long-term disability, divorce, or departure, such as retirement, or just like, hey, man, I'm out of gas. I don't even know if I'm retiring. I just can't do this anymore.
Right. Yeah. Which happens. Really coming up with a plan between partners. You're right. I've seen it happen where, they stop getting along. They break up then there's the business gets broken up, and then actually the business just goes out of business because there was they didn't really have a way, or just couldn't get, they couldn't figure out how to keep at least between them, like, all right, how are we going to, who wants to keep the business running, and rather just, we'll just blow it up, too bad, done.
Well, and I think that's the hard part. Like when you look at your buy-sell agreement that most, unrelated partners have, it typically covers if one of us dies. Okay, great. And then I also look at that and think, because if you don't do it at all, and the default is that the surviving spouse then succeeds to the membership interests, and now you're like, hey, I might like working great with you, but I don't intend to work with your wife. She's not in space. This isn't, so now it's like, now I'm over here. My partner, who was the yin to my yang, is dead.
And his wife's not my yang. Right.
Yeah. That's right.
I got you.
So now we got to figure it out. And so I say, hey, look, I'll buy out your interest. And so now I may love her, but if this is the last money that she's going to see from that business, then she's incentivized to get the highest possible price she can for it. Right.
Sure.
And if I'm trying to buy that interest back and not bankrupt myself or the company in the process, I'm trying to pay the least amount, not like I'm trying to short, just the least amount. So let's talk about, in that scenario, how do we value what the interest is, and how do we structure the payments? And oftentimes with partners who are unrelated to each other, business partners who are unrelated to each other, that buy-sell agreement in the event of death and long-term disability is funded through some sort of insurance, life insurance.
Interesting. Again, this is all something this is called planning. This is called having someone to advise you correctly. This is having a professional help you. This is like, we talk a lot about, real estate, on the real estate side, sales side, residential, commercial, whatever it may be, agents like myself, we always talk about, well, you guys are just door openers. No, we're not. We're really here to advise you and tell you, help the buyer or to sell, whoever it may be, in the process of, hey, look, this is what you need to be looking for. This is the data. This is what the sales trends are. This is this is how the property has appreciated over the last few years, or whatever it is. Or you're looking at an investment side. Well, this is what the rental market is here. This is what you get a cash flow, and this is what it could be in a cap rate, things like that. But as real estate agents or professionals like yourself, we're here to advise. I think we try to give the best advice we can. If someone takes it, great. If not, then whatever. It's your fault. That's your mistake in life, as I look at it. But we're here to advise, not just churn and burn to the next. So we get like, all right, I'm done with you. Next client, next. This is really I'm sure you and your wife have established clientele base that you are dealing with on a constant basis, or maybe not constantly, but at least yearly, or maybe every few months. And they're probably like, you're updating them as things are changing. Maybe there's new laws coming in, and this is also, this is all what professionals do. This is what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Even after the sale. right?
issue spot, right? Like, hey, like we'll meet quarterly and then we'll just say, hey, what's going on?
Right.
And it's like, oh, Timmy got into college. Hey, that's great. Hey, wait a minute.
Let's
Timmy's
plan.
going to college. Yeah, let's talk this through now. So Timmy's going to be away. We need to get him a power of attorney, medical power of attorney, durable power of attorney, because even though you may be paying for his college, they're not going to talk like the bank. If something happens to Timmy and
God
you
forbid.
need to be able to do these things, he's technically an adult, even though we both know you still have to wash his clothes for him on the weekend. So.
Look, I'll be honest with you. Look, I'm married, and thank God my wife knows how to iron. It's like, look, I mean, look, I don't know, but that's, my wife is great at that. And thank God. I mean, it's like everyone has their places in the hierarchy, or just how things work in the household or in life or in families. It's like, hey, my wife's good at this. I'm good at, fixing other things or taking care of how to make things work, or just basically really my life is like call the right guy to come here to the house and get it fixed and pay them.
Yeah, that's funny. Sometimes with the more routine things, like Jennifer is the driver, and then like if there's a cockroach, dead or alive, I'm on that.
That's my job. Yeah, that's spiders, cockroaches. I'm coming in with the shoe. That's it. Yeah. Done. Done. It's done. But my wife is better at other things than me. I like, if I get a cut or something like that, she's much better at handling that than I am, because I'm like, everyone it's what like we're talking about life, family, or even a business, our business partnerships in life. Everyone there's a balance, right? Like you said, like you gave me the example. Well, I'm good at marketing, but I'm good at operations. Everything's a balance. It's finding where you can make things work for everyone, and I guess that really just applies to everything in life. I mean, it's amazing. That's just not being married is really how you conduct yourself in life. It just in your workplace, how you work with the other people you work with and things like that. It's just all striking a balance and finding the pros, what you're good at, what my weakness is, what you're good at, what your weakness is, what I'm good at, working together.
Well, I think that, that's a great point with the teamwork aspect, because like, if you think about a comprehensive estate plan, you're going to have you're going to have the attorney involved, right? The CPA is going to be involved. The wealth manager is going to be involved. If we have a business and we're doing some sort of estate tax planning, the valuation expert is going to be involved, because the IRS is going to take a look. So the first time we take a real hard look probably shouldn't be when the IRS is looking too. So, so there's going to be a team. And to your point, each one has a critical role in its success. Now, selfishly, whatever it is that that I do, I think this is the most important thing, and then everything else does is a supporting actor. But in all earnestness, I can say that everybody is a co-equal part of the team, because it doesn't work without everybody doing what they're supposed to do.
Right.
So I think for clients, when you look at that if you said, hey, look, okay, but revocable living trust, I was still, what's the big takeaway from this? If you're listening to it, I would say the big takeaway is that the Revocable Living Trust is a comprehensive instruction book that addresses what happens with those assets: the house, the business, the investment accounts, all of the investment accounts for sure, in the event of incapacitation. Because it's a lot. I'm telling you, this is the truest thing that I've experienced relative to these two. Because you can say, well, you can do the same thing with a will and a power of attorney, durable power of attorney that says you can do whatever. I can assure you that I have found myself in the position where I'm at the bank, I'm calling whoever, big bank customer service, and I'm like, I have a durable power of attorney. It says I can go to the safe deposit box. I need to go to the safe deposit box. This is plainly me. And they're like, no, it's our policy that we don't do it. But if it's owned by the trust, and then you can say, I am the successor trustee, as it says in this document, I'm the successor trustee. Here's my certificate of trust. You have the doors open and you can do what you need to do. So even if you said, hey, look, in a continuing legal education class, it works every day with a will and a power of attorney. But in real life, where we live, it works best with a successor trustee and trust-owned property.
That's great. That's great info. I mean, that's a great point you just made there. I appreciate that. So how do we eliminate the estate tax quickly? How do we do that? How does that happen?
Okay, so you're right, and I will do it quickly, because the answer is it depends. That's the most lawyerly answer I can give. Damn. No, but I'll tell you what it depends on. So it depends on what it is that we're trying to accomplish. I know it's reduce estate tax or eliminate estate tax, but There are a multitude of ways to get there through advanced designs. It typically involves an irrevocable trust that has a grantor tax status. So that is, the trust for legal purposes exists, it's irrevocable, but the IRS looks right through it to the original grantor for income tax purposes.
Right.
So it takes it out of your taxable estate, whatever asset you put in there, any appreciation that happens with that asset happens outside of your taxable estate at death, and you pay the income tax on it during life. Now, there are levers you can put to toggle grantor, non-grantor status, whatever. But if you're saying, hey, look, we need to divest ourselves of these assets in order to get out of our taxable estate, well, that's kind of a simple way to look at it. But then you say, but also, I would say that I'm not ready to give up control. I don't need all the economic benefit, but I'm not ready to give up control.
Right.
So then, that's where you look at some of the IRS, like you look to the tax court, you look to, revenue rulings, you look to private letter rulings, and you say, hey, look, what works here? What works here is, recapitalizing with voting and non-voting shares. Mm-hmm. So the grantor can hold on to in their personal estate the voting interest and ship as much of the non-voting interest, sell it or gift and sell to the irrevocable trust. It's a pretty involved process. So I'm saying it quick because, like you said, let's do it quick. But yeah, there are ways to get there into a trust for the benefit of the kids or whoever. Like if you have philanthropic, this is one of my favorite things to do is plan for philanthropic interests.
Okay.
So we can get there a multitude of ways. And hey, if you're going to give it all to charity, you don't have to do any planning because you can just give it away to charity. It's out of your taxable estate.
Well, a lot of those billionaires are doing that, but that's to save on the state tax, but their kids are going to be just fine still.
Yeah.
It's like, the kids are not going to get that. No.
I'm pretty sure you'll be okay.
No, the kids are going to be just fine. God bless.
But whatever remains in their taxable estate at death, they're going to say it's for, whatever philanthropic passion they may have, which I think is great.
No, that's great. Hey, whatever works. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But I just like when people say, oh, look at them. They're giving away all their money. Because along the way, they're giving their money to their kids to reduce whatever the liability is down the road. It's not like the kids are never going to get anything. It's part of the plan, like you said. It's whatever they structure it. All right, as years go by, you're getting X, you're getting Y, going down, and then whatever's left at the end, I'm committing this much to the philanthropy, which is great. Right. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's legal. It's perfectly okay. I don't begrudge anyone who does that. I mean, it's wonderful. I mean, at least let the money, it's going to be used for a good purpose. But I always like when they're saying, they're not going to leave anything to their kids. I'm like, no, it's just part of the bigger picture.
That's right. The headline isn't always the entire story, right?
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. Oh, that's a good one. I was like, I've been using hype versus reality lately, but the headline does not always, it's not the rest of the story. Okay, I gotta write that one down.
But there are, I think, one of the things that I run into a lot is, I'm really passionate about it. It's like, what? Okay, well, I'm not one of the Gatsbys. I don't have a taxable estate. Why do I do this now? And so I think it's easy to kick the can down the road, and it's easy to do because life happens along the way. Like, hey, look, I was going to call the estate planning attorney. I was going to reach out, so if you talk to, your wealth manager or whoever, it's like, I was going to do all this, but then the water heater broke or like,
life got in the way, to say.
Yeah. But the reason is for the very reasons that we spoke about the whole way along the way is
planning.
Yeah. That, hey, look, it's not just about a taxable estate. It's about this. If you have a business where $20 million not worth $30 million is still pretty powerful impact for the family.
Absolutely. Planning versus waiting. Don't wait, because when you're waiting, waiting is just, you're too late at this point.
Right. And then none of us can say, obviously when an event involving incapacitation will occur. And then once you're out of runway, there is a set of rules. It's a default set of rules that each state's legislature promulgates.
100%.
It's not cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but it just doesn't, it's not one size fits all. And so, it becomes a lot more difficult at that point to do things. And so I always say, if we can plan to the left of the crisis, then we have a lot better options.
Like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
So if we plan at the point of crisis, our options are severely constrained.
Awesome. This is the takeaway, people. Plan. Don't wait. Don't kick the can down the road. This is not, it's coming. You can't delay it. better to be prepared.
Yeah, that's right.
Have your whole family prepared and everything, or your business prepared. Even if it's, everyone lived to 120, and live a very long life, but still, you don't want to wait to 119 if you get that far.
That's right. Yeah. So certainly, I would say for a takeaway for folks is you got to be cognizant if you are in the estate tax space in the unsweet spot of between about $14 and $30 million, where you're not right now, but you will be if CJA sunsets. Definitely. And folks can reach out, and I'll be more than happy to consult with them if somebody wants to talk.
Great. So how do we do that? How do we get in touch with you or your wife, or just you? How do we get in touch with you?
So my email is justin@bakerwealthstrategies.com. The website is bakerwealthstrategies.com. And so Jennifer is my wife. And she runs the operation. I'm the in-house counsel, but the whole team, if you get a hold of anybody, they'll get in touch with who you need to talk to.
Most importantly, so just like do you only work with people in Texas, or are you able to work with people outside of the state of Texas?
Across the state of Texas, across the country. So
that's important.
I do the design piece of whatever the whiteboarding of here's what it looks like. And even in Texas, I don't draft documents anymore. It's just not the highest and best use of my time.
Sure.
But we'll connect you with an attorney who can draft it. Or if you're in Florida, and it's particularly in Florida because I've done a lot of work for clients there, connect you with an estate planning attorney who's capable.
So you do have a state. So it's like, say, in Florida, you have people here in the state. Great. By the way, if you ever need any other recommendations, I got a couple that
I would too. Yeah,
I recommend to you that are super good people.
Yeah. Earlier you said that you had done.
Yeah, just with someone I've worked with before, and we have a couple of deals, probate deals. We sold the properties for the estate, but I had her on. And actually, her name is Lisa Glassman. She's, I don't remember, episode 6, maybe, I think it was, but I'll send you a link to that episode just so you can see who she is, and I'll be happy to connect you with her. I think she's great. And I have another attorney in Miami Beach who also I think is just super too.
That's perfect. Because as with anything, I think the hesitate. I don't know who to reach out to. I don't know what to do. Hey, look, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I don't do estate planning for a living. I do design, but I don't draft these things. I'm not going to charge you an engagement agreement.
Right.
So the point is, we can really turn the puzzle piece and see where we need to be. But they're just so, especially for real estate investment professionals, there are so many marketed or syndicated companies out there selling these over complex. I call it clapping with your gloves on. It's a whole bunch of work for not much result. We did all this, we got that. And it's dude, and you're the exact same spot that you were when you started, except you're just out $7,500, $10,000, whatever.
It's a lot of money still. It's not chump change. It's money is money still. So we have you guys have a Facebook and social media or anything like that as well? Do people can find you on?
We do. I will have to drop it to you. I'm not the technology wizard.
No problem. I think I have it just in case. But I think you guys I think people can find you on Facebook at Baker Wealth Strategies as well. I think that's, but we'll confirm that. We put that in there for you.
I knew my email address, so I was pretty happy with it.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's important. That's very important. All right, Justin, this was fun. I enjoyed it. The conversation was great. Let's hope we can meet each other down the road. And I will, if you ever need anyone in Florida for, estates and trusts, and I'm happy to make some recommendations to you. And all right, hopefully we can be of help to each other.
I wish you the best absolutely down there. It's an exciting time in the real estate business down there. It's wild.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting now. Yeah. But, everything's a cycle. So we're in a cycle right now. So it'll come through as always. All right, Justin, have yourself a great day. And I appreciate you coming on with me. Thank you.
For sure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's it for today's episode of the Krinzman Property Playbook. I hope you've gained some valuable insights and feel inspired to take your next steps in the real estate game. If you're ready to make a move or need expert guidance, let's connect. Whether you're buying, selling, or looking to invest, I'm here to help you navigate the South Florida market with confidence. You can reach out to me directly through my website or on social media. Let's get the conversation started and make your real estate goals a reality. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time on the Krinzman Property Playbook.